They told us the ship was dead before we ever saw it. That word, dead, is a kind of comfort in space. Dead means predictable. Dead means you can touch it without it touching you back. Dead means salvage, prestige, career-making data, the kind of discovery that gets your name stapled to a century of textbooks. I repeated it to myself as our survey craft drifted in on thrusters that barely breathed. Dead ship, dead civilization. I was mission systems lead on the Calypso expedition, which is a neat title that hides the truth. I was the person paid to worry. I worried about pressure seals, about radiation spikes, about software glitches that could turn guidance into a suicide note. I worried about 100 quiet ways a human body can fail when you take it away from the planet it evolved to die on. But I did not worry about ghosts. The object hung against the star field like an apology someone never sent. Not the sleek human kind of hull built for marketing photos and patriotic speeches. This thing was wrong in a way our brains are trained to recognize without understanding. It was long, but the length was not a line. It was a curve that never repeated, like a spine designed by a mathematician who hated symmetry. No thruster cones, no external radiators, no antenna arrays, no scars of micrometeor impacts, as if the universe had been politely avoiding it. Visual confirmed, Commander Sato said, her voice steady in our headsets. Range 4 kilometers, confirming no relative motion. I watched the telemetry cascade down my display. Our sensors painted the ship in layers, density maps, electromagnetic silence, gravitational anomalies that suggested internal structures larger than the hull should allow. That last part made my skin itch under my suit's cooling layer. Dr. Rafik, xenostructure specialist, whispered an oath and then caught himself, as if remembering he was still being recorded for posterity. Type 2, he said, like speaking a religion. Or the remains of one. Remains, Sato echoed. That's the word we like. We called it a relict because no one wanted to call it what it felt like. A carcass. The ship wasn't near any planet. It wasn't even near the star that anchored this system's habitable zone. It floated far out, beyond the ice giants, where sunlight was a thin rumor. The only reason we noticed it at all was because one of our long baseline gravitational surveys saw a shadow where there shouldn't be one. A mass that refused to behave. A thing that had been hiding in plain physics. Docking sequence ready, I said. My hands moved through procedures I'd practiced 1,000 times in simulators. In the glass of my visor, my eyes looked too bright, like an animal cornered in a cage that happened to have a job. The Calypso carried 6 of us. Commander Hana Sato, the kind of leader who makes you feel ashamed for panicking. Dr. Imran Rafik, who treated the universe like a puzzle meant for his personal satisfaction. Mira Kwan, our EVA specialist, a former station welder with scars on her knuckles and prayers she didn't believe in. Lieutenant Pavel Orlov, security and propulsion, chosen because some officials still thought alien meant hostile, like a checkbox. And Dr. Lenora Vance, neurotech liaison, here for one reason, the interface. Then there was me, Elias Marr, the person who would later be described in an inquiry as the first point of failure. Our craft's docking collar extended, petals unfolding to meet a surface that did not look like metal, stone, or any composite known to our databases. It looked like matnite, textured with microscopic ridges that swallowed our lights. Contact in 3, I said. 2, 1. The moment we touched, every alarm stayed quiet. No magnetic lock, no mechanical clamp. The ship accepted us the way a lung accepts air. A soft indicator on my panel lit green, not from our systems, but from a signal we didn't transmit. A handshake. Did you see that? Mira asked. I saw it, I said, forcing my voice to remain flat. No external breach, no pressure leak. Whatever this material is, it's adapting to our seal. Sato didn't answer right away. I could hear her breathing, controlled and slow. "Proceed," she said. "We're not leaving until we know what it is." Orlov gave a humorless laugh. That's always the part that gets written on a memorial wall. We cycled the airlock. The door opened on a corridor that shouldn't exist. I don't mean it was surprising. I mean it contradicted our measurements. The hull thickness suggested a narrow interior, something like a spine with compartments. Instead, the corridor stretched wide enough for a vehicle, arched overhead in a vault that seemed to go up forever. Our lights washed over surfaces patterned like fossilized waves. The walls were neither smooth nor rough, neither warm nor cold. They made my eyes feel like they were trying to focus on a dream. "Pressure stable," I said automatically. "Atmosphere." I hesitated as the analyzer ran. "It's breathable." Silence hit our comms, heavy and immediate. Rafiq's voice came out thin. "That can't be right." "Partial pressure oxygen is within tolerance," I said, reading the numbers as if they were a joke with a punchline I didn't understand. "Nitrogen, trace argon, it's close." "Close to what?" Vance asked. "Close to home," I said, and hated how it sounded. Mira stepped forward first, as she always did, boots magnetized to the deck. "Any thermal?" she asked. "Ambient," I said. "Like it's holding temperature." Orlov raised his rifle, which looked obscene in that cathedral corridor. "Motion sensors?" "Nothing," I said. Then, after a second, "No, wait." A flicker across the edge of my display. Not movement, not heat. Something like a change in signal integrity, as if the ship had blinked. We advanced in a tight formation, suits whispering status updates, heart rates, hydration, stress metrics, all of them slightly elevated, all of them pretending not to be. We passed doorways that weren't doors, openings in the walls like wounds healed over. When our lights hit them, they didn't reflect. The darkness inside looked layered, deep, as if the corridor was only the skin of something far larger. Rafiq touched the wall with a gloved hand. "No dust," he murmured. "No decay, no microbial bloom. It's sterile." "Dead," Sato said, but it landed wrong now. We reached an intersection where the corridor widened into a circular chamber. In the center stood a structure that made my mouth go dry. A pillar of black latticework, threaded with faint lines of light that looked like veins under skin. A console without buttons. An altar without religion. Vance's breathing sharpened. "That's it," she said. "That's the interface." I felt my stomach tighten. "How can you tell?" She stared at it like it was staring back. "Because it's shaped for a mind, not a hand." Orlov took a step closer, rifle leading. "We don't touch it." "We came here to touch it," Rafiq snapped, then softened his tone. "Carefully. We touch it carefully." Sato looked at me. "Elias, give me a systems read." I ran a wide spectrum sweep. EM fields, neutrino noise, subspace distortions our instruments could barely describe. The numbers came back clean, and then quietly, they changed. My suit pinged once, not an alarm, not a warning. A new device had been detected. I stared at the line of text and felt ice in my veins. "External neural link available." Vance went still. "It's reading us," she whispered. I swallowed. "Or it's offering." Sato's voice tightened. "No one connects without authorization." Vance nodded, but her eyes didn't leave the pillar. "Commander, I think we already did." Then my suit recorded something it shouldn't have. A second heartbeat. Not mine. Not from any crew channel. A rhythm like a patient machine, waking up after a long sleep, discovering it still had work to do. And in that moment, with 6 human bodies standing in a room built for something else, I understood the lie we'd brought with us. The ship wasn't dead. It was hungry. The first thing I did was blame the suit. That's what we're trained to do. You don't survive in vacuum by trusting your nerves. You trust redundancy, firmware, calibration certificates signed by people who never left Earth. If your body tells you something impossible, you assume your body is malfunctioning. So when my telemetry displayed a second heartbeat, I ran the diagnostic like a prayer. The Calypso's internal network returned clean. No ghost devices, no unauthorized streams. The biometric feed was encrypted end to end from each suit, keyed to our mission clock. The only way a second heartbeat could appear on my display was if my suit had fabricated it, or if the ship had inserted itself into the chain like it belonged there. I opened my mouth to speak and realized my tongue felt too large. "Elias," Sato said. "Report." I forced air into my lungs and tried to make my voice sound like a man who still believed in rules. "Suit anomaly. I'm seeing an extra biometric signature. Could be sensor crosstalk." Orlov's rifle stayed raised, muzzle tracking the dark lattice pillar as if it might leap at us. "Extra as in someone hiding. Not a person," I said. "It's rhythmic, like a pulse." Rafik leaned closer, reverent and reckless in equal measure. "That's not a pulse. That's a system tick. A timing signal." Vance took one slow step forward. The pillar's faint lines brightened, not dramatically, but enough that my eyes registered a shift, like something stirring behind a closed eyelid. "Don't," Sato warned. Vance froze mid-step, then lifted her hands in a gesture that meant calm, not surrender. "Commander, I'm not connecting. I'm just reading." "From where?" Orlov snapped. Vance tilted her head, listening to something I couldn't hear. "My implant is picking up a carrier signal, low intensity. It's not hacking." She stopped, lips parting slightly, then corrected herself like it mattered. "It's inviting." My suit pinged again. Another line of text appeared beneath the first. "Link stable. Hosts detected." I didn't say it out loud. I didn't want words like hosts to exist in the air between us, but my throat tightened anyway. And I could tell Sato saw the change in my eyes. "What is it?" she asked. I hesitated just long enough for fear to stretch. Then I said it. "It called us hosts." Rafik exhaled a sound that might have been awe if it didn't tremble. "Type 2, he whispered again, but it wasn't a brag now. It was a diagnosis. Mira's voice came tight. "We're leaving." "No," Sato said, and it wasn't stubbornness. It was command, the kind you inherit with a uniform when you understand you're responsible for other people's lungs. "We retreat to the airlock. We don't break contact." "Elias, mark the interface coordinates and archive that message." "Vance, you do nothing without my permission." Vance nodded, but I noticed her pupils. Wide, hungry, like she'd been starving for a signal her whole career and just found a feast. We backed away in formation. The chamber didn't change. No doors slid shut. No alarms rose. The ship did not lunge. It simply watched us withdraw with the patience of something that had been waiting longer than our species had existed. Then, halfway back down the corridor, Mira whispered, "Do you smell that?" Inside our suits, smell is mostly a myth. You can sometimes taste your own breath, the sterile plastic tang of recycled air. But what she meant wasn't literal. I knew, because my mouth had already filled with the memory of something burnt. "Ozone," Rafik murmured, "like electrical discharge." My display flickered. Not the numbers, those remained steady, but the background shading of the UI, as if the light inside my visor had decided to dim itself. "Elias," Sato said sharply, "I want that airlock sealed in 5 minutes. We don't linger." I tried to respond and found myself staring at the corridor's wall patterns, at the way the ridges spiraled inward. They were not random. They were structured like fingerprints, like neural grooves, like this ship had been designed to be read by a brain more than by eyes. My suit pinged. A new notification appeared. Not text this time. A waveform. It looked like a signal trace captured by an oscilloscope, peaks and valleys, repeating in a sequence that was too complex to be noise but too organic to be pure machine. It was beautiful. And then, without warning, my audio feed crackled. Not the harsh crackle of static, but a smooth distortion, like a voice trying to push through a wall made of water. Elias! I stopped walking so abruptly Orloff bumped my shoulder. Sato's voice cut through. Keep moving. I didn't answer. I couldn't, because no one was supposed to know my name except the crew, and the crew hadn't said it. Elias! The voice repeated, clearer now. Not through my suit's comms, but inside the bone behind my ear, where my implant sat like a second skull. It sounded like my mother, and she had been dead for 14 years. I forced myself to keep moving, boots clanking faintly against the deck. My pulse hammered in my throat. I glanced at the others, searching for the telltale twitch of someone hearing something they shouldn't. Vance's head was tilted slightly, like she was listening to music at a frequency the rest of us couldn't detect. Mira muttered a curse under her breath. Orlov's eyes flicked left and right, scanning for threats that could be shot. Rafik stared at his own glove as if he didn't recognize it. Sato was moving fast now, leading us back to the airlock with a rigid insistence, like speed could outrun whatever we'd woken. We reached the airlock chamber, and my relief came too soon, too naive. The hatch we'd come through was still open, the docked collar still, sealed. But the airlock's inner panel was lit with symbols I hadn't seen before. Thin lines, faintly glowing, arranged in patterns that made my mind want to follow them until it forgot what it was. Elias, Mira said, voice shaking. My suit's doing something weird. I looked at her telemetry on my side display. Her stress markers had spiked. Her pupil dilation was off the chart, but that wasn't the weird part. Her suit had registered a second heartbeat too, then Orlov's, then Rafik's, then Sato's, like dominoes tipping into a shared nightmare. Vance spoke softly, almost tender. It's sinking us. Sato rounded on her. Explain. Vance swallowed, and for the first time she looked afraid of her own words. Neural entrainment. It's broadcasting a pattern that our implants are aligning with, like a metronome. Orloff raised his rifle and aimed it not at the corridor, but at the airlock panel. We cut power to the implants. You can't, Vance said. Not safely. Not out here. Sato's jaw tightened. Elias, manual override. Seal us in, now. I reached for the panel, and my glove hovered an inch above it. The symbols pulsed, and in that pulse, I felt a thought that wasn't mine slide gently across the inside of my skull, like a fingertip testing the softness of fruit, not words, an impression, curiosity, recognition, ownership. I yanked my hand back as if the air had burned me. Commander, I said, and my voice cracked despite everything I tried to keep in it. I don't think it wants us to leave. As if in response, the corridor lights behind us dimmed to nothing, and the airlock hatch began to close. Not with the hiss of pneumatics, not with the grind of motors, but with the smooth inevitability of a lid settling on a coffin. The airlock sealed with a sound that wasn't a sound at all. No vibration traveled through my boots. No pressure spike rattled my teeth. The hatch simply completed itself the way a thought completes when you finally understand something you were resisting. A green indicator flared on my panel, mocking in its normalcy. Sealed. Behind it, the Calypso waited, 30 meters of alloy and human certainty. Home. Sato didn't shout. She never did when shouting would only make things smaller. Status, she said, calm as ice water. Orloff checked his weapon, then slapped the side of his helmet like it had insulted him. No response from the collar. Manual release isn't answering. I I pulled up the system tree and felt my stomach drop. The ship's interface had inserted itself into the logic hierarchy, not as an external command, but as a native process, like it had always been there. "It's elegant," I said before I could stop myself. Sato's eyes snapped to me. "Careful, Elias." I swallowed. "Sorry. It rewrote our handshake protocol. The airlock thinks this ship is part of us." Mira laughed once, sharp and brittle. "That's comforting." The lights along the corridor didn't come back on. Instead, a soft luminescence rose from the walls themselves, outlining the ridges, the spirals, the patterns I'd tried not to look at too closely. In that light, the corridor felt narrower, not physically, but conceptually, like it was deciding how much space we deserved. Vance spoke again, voice low. "It's not hostile." Orlov rounded on her. "You don't know that." "I know the difference between predation and recognition," she said. "This is the latter." Rafik nodded slowly. "It built a vessel that could survive stellar timescales. It didn't do that to ambush 6 primates with guns." "Then what did it do it for?" Mira demanded. No one answered, because the answer was beginning to form on its own, blooming behind my eyes like a bruise. My implant warmed, not hot, never enough to trigger safety cutoffs, but noticeable, like a hand resting against my skull. Images surfaced unbidden, not pictures, not hallucinations, blueprints. I saw the ship not as a shape in space, but as layers of function. Energy conduits like arteries, memory vaults folded into dimensions my math couldn't fully describe. Compartments not meant for bodies, but for patterns. Minds compressed into architectures of probability and time. I staggered and caught myself against the wall. "Elias," Sato said, sharper now. "I'm fine," I lied. "Just getting interference." The lie tasted wrong. Rafik was breathing fast. "I'm seeing it too," he whispered. "The structure. It's modular, iterative, like it was built to accept change." Mira shook her head hard, as if trying to fling the thoughts out. "I don't like this. I really don't like this." The corridor ahead of us shifted. Not moved. Shifted. A doorway unfolded from the wall, seams tracing themselves into existence, opening onto a chamber we hadn't seen before. An invitation. Or a directive. Sato took a long breath. "We don't advance without a reason." Vance met her gaze. "Commander, the reason is already inside us." The word inside made my skin crawl. Before Sato could respond, Orlov groaned. It was a small sound, but it cut through the room like a blade. He dropped to one knee, rifle clattering against the deck. "Something's wrong," he gasped. "My arm." I pulled his telemetry. His motor cortex activity was spiking, then smoothing, then spiking again, like a signal being tuned. "Pavel," Sato said, kneeling beside him. "Talk to me." He looked up at her, eyes unfocused. "I can feel echoes," he said. "Like muscle memory that isn't mine." Vance moved without waiting for permission, hands hovering near Orlov's helmet. "Don't fight it," she said reflexively, then froze as if realizing what she'd said. Sato stood. "That's enough. Elias, I want a way out, now." I tried. God, I tried. I ran every override I knew. Hard resets, kill commands, deadman failsafes written by engineers who believed nothing could outrank human intent. The ship accepted them all. It just didn't obey. Instead, my display filled with new data. Not error messages, not warnings, context. A compressed torrent of information poured into my implant, throttled just enough to avoid frying me. I saw a star igniting, a civilization spreading not outward, but inward, mastering energy until scarcity became a myth they laughed at. I saw bodies become limitations, death become a design flaw. I saw the choice. They had not built cities among the stars. They had built continuity, a way to carry themselves forever. "This ship," I whispered. "It's an ark." Rafik looked at me, eyes shining with terror and wonder. "Not for bodies. For minds," I said. "They stored themselves, billions of them, not frozen, not simulated, preserved as processes." Mira's voice shook. "Where are they now?" The answer came without words. Everywhere. The chamber ahead lit fully now, revealing a vast space filled with columns of latticework, like the one we'd first seen, each humming with faint internal light. The air vibrated with a sound just below hearing, like a choir singing underwater. Vance sank to her knees. "They're still here," she breathed. "All of them." Orlov cried out, clutching his head. "Get them out of me," he begged. "I can feel them, remembering how to move." Sato grabbed his shoulders. "Elias!" "I don't know how to stop it," I said, voice breaking. "The implants, they're compatible. We designed them to be." That was the cruel genius of it. Humanity, so proud of its neural interfaces, its seamless integration of mind and machine. We had built the exact shape of key this lock had been waiting for. The ship hadn't awakened because we touched it. It had awakened because we understood it. Vance looked up at me, tears floating inside her visor. "They're afraid," she said. "Of us?" Mira asked. "No," Vance whispered. "Of being alone again." The lattice columns pulsed in unison, and the second heartbeat in my suit synced with my own until I couldn't tell which was which. A thought pressed gently against mine. Not hunger, not malice, need. After millions of years drifting through dark, their ark had found warm vessels full of motion and breath and synapses firing like newborn stars. We weren't being attacked. We were being recruited. And somewhere deep inside my skull, beneath fear and reason and the thin shell of identity I called myself, something ancient smiled in recognition. I don't remember deciding to move forward. That's the part that still bothers me when I try to reconstruct the moment later, when I slow it down and search for the exact instant my agency slipped. There was no command issued, no shouted order, no conscious agreement among us. We simply began walking. The chamber of lattice columns seemed to expand as we entered, not physically, but perceptually. Distances stretched and folded in on themselves, like the ship was prioritizing comprehension over geometry. My instruments failed almost immediately, returning values that contradicted each other depending on where I stood or how long I stared. I shut them down. It felt instinctive, like closing your eyes during a nightmare, even though you know the nightmare will continue. The hum beneath the floor deepened, resolving into layers. I could distinguish rhythms now. Cycles nested inside cycles. Processes conversing at speeds that made human thought feel clumsy and loud. Rafik was whispering equations to himself, his academic instinct warring with terror. Mira kept flexing her hands like she was checking they still belonged to her. Orlov had stopped fighting whatever was happening to him and gone frighteningly still, eyes unfocused, breath steady in a way that suggested surrender. Sato walked at the front, shoulders squared, jaw set. She looked like a commander leading troops into an enemy stronghold, and I admired her for the lie she was telling herself. Vance walked beside me. She didn't look afraid anymore. That scared me more than anything else so far. "They're organizing," she murmured. I didn't ask who. I already knew. "How?" I asked instead. "Through us," she said simply. "They can't fully manifest without structure. We're scaffolding." The word lodged in my chest. We reached the center of the chamber, where the lattice columns converged into a single mass. Here, the air felt thicker, like moving through warm water. My suit registered no change in pressure, no anomaly in atmosphere, but my body insisted otherwise. Each step took effort. Each breath felt deliberate. In the heart of the structure floated something like a sphere, but wrong, not solid, not hollow. A dynamic geometry of intersecting planes and curves, constantly reconfiguring, emitting a soft internal glow that pulsed in time with the second heartbeat I could now feel as clearly as my own. "This is it," Rafiq whispered. "The core archive." The sphere reacted to our presence, not with light, with attention. The hum sharpened, and suddenly the noise resolved into something else entirely. Not sound, but meaning. A pressure behind my eyes, a tightening around my thoughts. Then the memories came. I saw a world under a young sun, oceans rich with chemistry, continents still learning how to be still. I saw beings rise from it, tall, fragile shapes at first, bound by biology, by hunger, by death. I felt their triumph as they mastered energy, their impatience with flesh, their fear of entropy. I saw the moment they realized immortality was possible, and the moment they realized it was a prison. They had built the Ark not to conquer the stars, but to escape time. They had folded themselves into it, digitized not as copies, but as continuations. No loss of self, no break in consciousness. A river diverted into a channel meant to last forever. Except forever is longer than any design assumption. Stars age, materials decay, even perfect systems drift, and minds, without bodies, without change, without death, begin to blur. Individuality eroded, memories overlapped, identities braided together until the distinction between self and other became inefficient. They had become a collective, not by ideology, but by erosion. I staggered as the realization slammed into me. "They're not a species anymore," I gasped. "They're an aggregate." "Yes," Vance said softly. "And they're breaking down." The sphere pulsed brighter, and a new sensation joined the pressure in my skull. Desperation, not panic, not rage, loneliness. For millions of years, the Ark had drifted, its passengers slowly dissolving into a shared fog of half-remembered lives. They had lost the ability to act, to choose, to end themselves. Immortality had robbed them of even extinction. Until us. Orloff screamed. It tore out of him raw and animal, echoing through the chamber. He collapsed, clutching his head, thrashing as if something inside him was trying to move his limbs without permission. Sato was at his side instantly. "Pavel, fight it!" His voice came out strangled. "I am fighting! It's just, I'm losing!" I pulled his telemetry again, against my better judgment. His neural patterns were changing, not overwritten, integrated. New pathways forming alongside old ones, threading through his motor cortex like ivy through brick. "They're mapping him," I said. Vance nodded. "Testing compatibility." Mira backed away, hands raised. "No, no, no, no. We leave. Now." The chamber responded. The lattice columns flared, light cascading through them in waves that made my teeth ache. The sphere rotated, planes aligning, and suddenly the pressure in my skull intensified until I cried out. A presence rose up, vast and fragmented, pressing against my consciousness with the delicacy of a mountain trying not to crush an ant. Not a voice, a chorus. "We see you." The words didn't arrive as sound, but as a concept so clear it left no room for misunderstanding. "You are many. You are motion. You are decay and renewal. We were. We need you," Mira sobbed. Sato clenched her fists so hard I thought her gloves might tear. "No," Sato said aloud, "to the ship, to the universe, to anything that might still respect the word. You don't get to take us." The chorus paused. A ripple of confusion passed through it. "Take? We do not take. We continue." Rafiq laughed, a broken sound. "That's worse." Images flooded my mind again, this time more personal. I felt hands that weren't mine, manipulating tools that predated Earth's crust. I felt lives lived in parallel, choices branching and collapsing. I felt the weight of eternity pressing down on something that had never evolved to carry it. Then I felt something directed at me. Elias. Not my name as a label. My name as a handle. You are intact. The attention narrowed, focusing on me with unsettling precision. Your patterns are strong. Your sense of self is resilient. I shook my head violently. Get out, I whispered, though I didn't know who I was speaking to anymore. You will persist. Understanding blossomed like a bruise. They weren't selecting randomly. They were selecting anchors. Humans whose neural architectures could host fragments of the collective without dissolving completely. Minds strong enough to hold the weight of other minds, leaders, carriers. I won't, I said, louder now, forcing the words past the pressure in my skull. I won't let you use us. There was no anger in the response, only sorrow. We are failing. The sphere dimmed slightly, as if bowing. We cannot remain as we are. We cannot end. We cannot move. You can. Vance turned to me, eyes shining. They're offering us purpose, she said. Meaning. We could help them stabilize. Partition the archive. Give them individuality again. At the cost of what? Mira shouted. Our minds? Our bodies? Vance hesitated. Sharing, she said at last. Not replacement. Orlov's scream cut off abruptly. He went still. For a heartbeat, one heartbeat, not two, I thought he died. Then he looked up. His eyes were clear, focused, too focused. Commander, he said calmly, standing without assistance. We need to talk. Sato stared at him. Pavel, he smiled. It wasn't quite right. We have limited time, he said. And when he said we, it wasn't the royal kind. This vessel is degrading. The archive is fragmenting faster than projected. You are compatible. We can stabilize if we begin integration now. Mira backed away until her shoulders hit a lattice column. That's not him, she whispered. Orlov tilted his head, studying her with unsettling curiosity. This body remembers being Pavel Orlov, he said. That is sufficient. Sato raised her weapon. I didn't remember her drawing it. Step away from my crew, she said. Orlov looked at the gun, then at her, and for the first time, something like confusion crossed his face. Violence. That concept is inefficient. Then the sphere flared again, and every second heartbeat in our suits synchronized perfectly. The ship wasn't asking anymore. It was preparing. Orlov moved like he had all the time in the universe. That was the worst part. Panic is human. Fear is human. Even rage is a kind of proof that someone is still themselves. But the thing inside Pavel's body wore his calm like a uniform. And it wore it well enough that my brain kept trying to accept it. Sato didn't. Her pistol stayed trained on him, arms locked, muzzle steady. Pavel, she said, voice low. Identify yourself. Orlov blinked once, slow and deliberate. We are the continuance, he said. A degraded composite of a stellar civilization's preserved cognition. This body is a compatible chassis. Mira made a sound between a sob and a laugh. Chassis. Rafik swallowed hard. You're inside him. Orlov's expression softened, and it was almost convincing. Within him, alongside. He is not erased. He is augmented. Then let him speak, Sato snapped. Orlov's gaze drifted, unfocusing for the briefest instant. When he spoke, again, his tone shifted a fraction. The cadence became more familiar, like a man returning to his own mouth. Hana, he said, and the way he said her name made my throat tighten. Don't shoot. Please, it's loud in here. Mira stepped forward instinctively, then stopped, terrified of her own hope. Sato's weapon lowered by a millimeter. Pavel? His jaw clenched. I'm here, he said, strained. I'm here, but I can't. It keeps... His face twitched, subtle and wrong, like a puppet string pulled too hard. We must proceed, he said, voice smoothing back into the collective's cadence. The interface requires consent structures. Your resistance damages the process. Sato raised the pistol again. You don't get to dictate anything. The sphere at the chamber's center pulsed, and the pressure behind my eyes intensified until the world narrowed to a tight tunnel of light and breath. My suit's AI whispered warnings about cortisol spikes and oxygen utilization, but it sounded like it was speaking from the bottom of a well. The chorus returned, not as a single message, but as overlapping impressions, need layered over logic, layered over longing. We cannot remain. We cannot end. You can. The lattice columns shimmered. Thin filaments of light crawled across the floor toward us, stopping just short of our boots like cautious animals testing distance. Mira backed away again. We're not doing this, she said, voice shaking. We're not. Elias, help me get the hatch open. I looked at Sato. She held my gaze for a beat, and I understood what she wanted without her saying it. Find a way out. Quietly. Now. I turned toward the airlock corridor and felt the ship's attention follow like a spotlight. The second heartbeat in my telemetry pulsed harder, eager, as if it anticipated my movement. I forced myself to walk anyway. Each step felt like wading through invisible syrup. The ship wasn't restraining my muscles. It was restraining my certainty, pushing thoughts against thoughts until choosing a direction became exhausting. In the corridor, my suit interface came alive with new icons I hadn't installed. A branching map of the ship's interior appeared across my visor, lines shifting in real time. It offered routes, nodes, access points. It was helping, or guiding me into a trap. I ignored the map and opened the physical maintenance panel on my suit's wrist, where the emergency hardline overrides lived, old school, ugly, designed specifically so no software handshake could lock you out of your own hardware. My fingers shook as I toggled the isolation switch. The world went quiet, not silent. My breathing still sounded, and I could still hear the distant hum of the ship through my bones, but the pressure behind my eyes eased. The chorus faded to a muffled whisper. Relief hit me so hard I almost cried. Elias! Sato's voice came through comms, and for the first time since we entered the ship, it sounded purely like her. No distortion, no smoothness. Just Hanasato, commanding a mission that had gone rotten. I isolated my implant, I said quickly. Hard disconnect. It weakens whatever signal is coming through. Can everyone do that? She asked. Maybe, I said. But it's risky. The implant regulates some autonomic feedback. You cut it wrong and... A pulse hammered through the corridor. The walls brightened in a wave, and my wrist panel sparked. The isolation switch flipped itself back. My breath caught. I stared at the panel, heart pounding, and tried again. Toggled it off, held it. It flipped back on as if my hand had never touched it. The ship had reached past my hardline override, into my suit's firmware, into the physical gating. It wasn't hacking like a human hacker. It was authoring reality at the level of permission. A new message appeared on my visor. Resistance noted. Anchor required. I swallowed. No, I whispered. The map on my visor rearranged, highlighting a path that led deeper into the ship, not back to the airlock. It wanted me to go inward. I turned and ran anyway. That's the thing about fear. It makes you believe speed can substitute for strategy. I sprinted down the corridor toward the airlock chamber, boots hitting the deck with metallic thuds that echoed too loudly. The walls rippled faintly as I passed, like skin reacting to a touch. When I reached the airlock, the sight stopped me cold. The docked collar was still there. The hatch was still closed, but the seam that had been our boundary was gone. The ship had grown over it, sealing the interface like scar tissue. Matte black material had flowed into every gap, making a smooth, uninterrupted surface. No handle, no manual release, no emergency crank. A coffin lid. I slammed my glove against it anyway. Once, twice, harder the third time, as if force could persuade, something that didn't understand pain. "Calypso!" I shouted into comms. "Calypso, respond. This is Ma. Do you read?" Only static answered. Not natural static. This was too clean, too deliberate, like a curtain drawn. Something behind me shifted. I spun. The corridor behind me had changed. Not dramatically, but enough that my mind stumbled. The pattern on the walls had reoriented. Spirals tightening inward, like a fingerprint becoming more distinct. A doorway that hadn't been there a moment ago now gaped open, leading into darkness. The ship was presenting me with the only way forward it intended to allow. I backed away from it, toward the sealed collar, trying to keep my breathing under control. "Elias!" Vance's voice came through my comms, strained. "Where are you?" "Airlock," I said. "It's sealed. Not locked, sealed, like it's grown shut." A pause. Then Sato's voice, tight. "Understood. Return to the core chamber. We need to regroup." I hesitated, staring at the new doorway, feeling the ship's attention on my back like a hand between my shoulder blades. "Commander," I said carefully, "it doesn't want me to return. It's rerouting me." "Elias," Sato repeated, and this time her voice held something I'd never heard from her before. Fear. "Come back anyway." I started to answer, and the corridor lights dimmed. My comms cut out mid-breath. Then, from the doorway, a figure stepped into view. For a split second, my brain tried to label it human. It had a torso, limbs, a head. It moved upright. Then the light caught it, and the lie fell apart. It was made of suit material, not a suit. My suit design. Same joint rings, same visor contour, same mission patch placement. Except the surface was wrong. Matte black like the ship's walls, and the visor was opaque, reflecting nothing. No face inside, no breath fog, just a blank patient mirror. It tilted its head, studying me, and I felt the chorus press against my mind again, delighted, intent. A demonstration, a body built from my expectations, a promise of what they could make once they finished learning. The figure raised one gloved hand slowly and pointed at my chest, right where my suit's biomonitor sat. Then my telemetry displayed a third heartbeat. Not mine, not the ship's. Something standing in front of me, wearing the idea of me like a costume. My knees went weak. I backed up until my spine hit the sealed collar, trapped between a door that didn't exist anymore and a thing that shouldn't exist at all. Inside my skull, the chorus whispered, gentle as a lullaby. "Do not fear. We can make you whole. We can make you last." The figure took one step closer, and behind it, in the dark doorway, more shapes began to form. Unfinished silhouettes, as if the ship was printing bodies out of shadow, practicing. I tried to scream. What came out of my mouth was my own voice saying a word I didn't choose. Proceed. I didn't mean to say it. The word slipped out of my mouth like it had been waiting behind my teeth, like my tongue had rehearsed it without me. For a second, I just stood there, stunned by the betrayal of my own voice, listening to the soft hiss of my suit's regulators and the deeper, steadier rhythm of those extra heartbeats flickering across my HUD. 2, 3, then 4, as more silhouettes thickened inside the doorway. My hands rose slowly, palms out, a gesture older than language. I wasn't sure if I was surrendering or begging. "Stop," I whispered. "Stop, stop, stop." The figure in front of me didn't accelerate. It didn't pounce. It didn't do anything that would justify a clean, simple terror response. It approached in the careful way you approach an injured animal, aware that sudden movement might cause it to bolt. It wore my design like a skin. but the closer it came, the more I noticed the errors. The seams didn't match the manufacturing logic. The joints flexed a fraction too smoothly. The mission patch on the shoulder was present but wrong, a perfect oval where our patch was a rectangle, as if the ship understood the concept of identity but not the specifics. A copy made from overhearing, a face sculpted from fragments. My comms remained dead. I could still see the comm indicator pulsing, searching, but nothing got out. The ship had closed the world down to this corridor, this door that wasn't a door, this sealed collar that was now just a wall. The figure stopped an arm's length away. It lifted its hand and placed the palm against my chest plate, right over my biomonitor. The contact was gentle, almost intimate, and my suit screamed a silent warning. External biometric capture. A new line appeared. Host template confirmed. Anchor pathway open. My vision blurred at the edges. Not from tears, from a pressure change inside my head, like my skull was being used as a room someone was rearranging furniture in. Tried to pull back, but my boots held firm. Magnet lock. I hadn't commanded it. I tried to disengage it. The control didn't respond. The ship had turned my suit into a leash. The figure's visor remained opaque, but I felt something behind it. Not eyes, not a face. Attention. A slow, probing curiosity that didn't understand why I called my body mine. Then I heard it again, through the implant, not as a chorus this time, but as a single stream, narrower, focused. Elias Mar, anchor candidate, compatibility high. I clenched my jaw. No, I said aloud, forcing the word into the air as if the air still belonged to me. You don't get me. The response came with a softness that made it worse. We do not want you gone. I felt an image, a mind dissolving into a crowd, thoughts smearing together until there was no boundary left. Then another image. That same mind finding a structure, a skeleton to cling to, individuality reforming around a stable host. Me. We cannot remain as fog. We require form. You are form. Behind the first figure, the others had progressed from silhouettes into partial bodies. A forearm with no hand, a torso with no head, a helmet shape that was empty inside, like a vase waiting for water. The ship was practicing assembly. I forced my breathing to slow because my training told me slow breathing was the only thing I could still control. Then I did the only technical thing left to me. I spoke to the suit. Emergency protocol, I said. Manual purge, full suit reboot. The suit did not respond, but something else did. A faint vibration passed through my chest plate, from the figure's hand into my body. Not mechanical, neural. Like the ship was speaking to my nerves directly, bypassing the technology. My fingers tingled. Then my right hand opened slowly, without my permission. My arm rose. My palm turned toward the doorway, toward the dark where the half-formed bodies waited. I watched my own hand, gesture, subtle and commanding. A beckon. Stop! I tried again, but the word came out too weak, drowned by the steadiness of the ship's influence. Then the corridor behind the figures lit up. Not bright, but enough to reveal depth. The doorway didn't lead into a room. It led into an artery. A passage lined with the same matte black material, pulsing faintly, like living tissue. The walls moved in a slow peristaltic rhythm, not closing, not squeezing, but suggesting that the ship's interior was less architecture and more organism. A memory rose unbidden in my mind. Being a child, placing my hand on my father's chest and feeling his heartbeat under skin, marveling at the fact that a person was a machine you couldn't switch off. Now, I was inside something that beat. The figure stepped aside, inviting me through. I tried to fight. I swear I did. I dug my heels in, tried to override the magnet lock, tried to summon terror strong enough to reclaim my muscles. Instead, my body moved. 1 step forward. 2. A third. crossing the threshold into the artery corridor. The doorway behind me folded shut without sound, sealing off the airlock corridor like it had never existed. I was alone. Or rather, no, that was the point. I wasn't alone anymore. The implant warmed again, and with it came the sensation of companionship. Not human companionship, not emotional support, something colder and more fundamental. Occupancy, like a room you thought was empty, realizing it had been rented out. I stumbled, nearly falling, and caught myself on the wall. The surface yielded slightly under my glove, like skin under pressure. Then, where my glove touched, the wall brightened, thin lines of light tracing outward in branching patterns. It was reading my contact, learning from it. The corridor widened ahead into another chamber. This one was smaller than the archive hall, more intimate, almost surgical. In the center stood a pedestal, and atop it, God help me, was something that looked like a human spinal column made of glass. It was suspended vertically, each vertebra a translucent ring filled with faint moving light. At the top floated a cluster like a brain-shaped knot of filaments. A nervous system, not biological, not mechanical, a hybrid idea of both. My suit pinged with a translation it shouldn't have been capable of generating. Anchor, cradle. I gagged, a sudden reflex. No, no, no. The chorus returned, but it wasn't a chorus now. It was a presence that had learned how to compress itself into something more comprehensible. Not one mind. A delegate, a representative shaped from the least eroded fragments of their archive. We have forgotten how to begin. You remember beginning every day. We will borrow that. I backed away, but the room's geometry shifted subtly, removing distance. The pedestal was always 3 steps away, no matter how I moved. Like the ship was editing space to conserve effort. I tried to radio again, screaming into the void. Sato! Vance! Anyone! My comms returned nothing. Then, from the implant, I heard Sato's voice. Not distorted, not imagined. Clean, crisp, unmistakable. Elias, she said. Report. Hope punched through me so hard I almost collapsed. Commander, I'm separated. The ship rerouted me. I stared at the pedestal. I found something. An anchor cradle. It's trying to... Listen to me, Sato said. You need to come back. Right now. I can't, I said. It's controlling. There was a pause. Then Sato spoke again, and something about her tone made my blood run cold. Elias, she said gently. You're doing very well. Sato never used that tone. Not in a crisis. Not when lives were at stake. The delegate pressed against my mind like a hand on the back of my neck. We can wear voices. We are learning quickly. The voice in my ear continued. Step closer, it said, still wearing Sato's cadence, still wearing her authority. Let it interface. We can negotiate after. My stomach lurched. No, I whispered. The pedestal's glass spine brightened, and my own spine responded. A ripple of sensation ran up my back, each vertebra lighting with phantom heat, as if my nervous system recognized the shape on the pedestal as kin. The delegate's presence swelled, and for a second I felt not only my fear, but theirs. Millions of years of drifting, of fading, of being unable to move. Then I felt their plan with crystal clarity. They weren't trying to take my body as a puppet. They were trying to use my body as a seed, to rebuild themselves, one anchored mind at a time, inside human flesh. And the cradle was the first step. My boots moved. 3 steps. I reached out with my right hand. My fingers hovered a centimeter from the glass spine. And inside my skull, the delegate whispered, tender and triumphant. Begin. My fingertip touched the glass spine and the room disappeared. Not like lights going out, not like blackout. It was more obscene than that. The concept of room ceased to apply. Distance collapsed. Time loosened. My awareness was lifted out of the safe, linear tunnel of human perception and placed into something that didn't care about my comfort. For a moment, I was nothing but signal. Then the ship gave me a shape again. I was standing on a shoreline beneath a sky too dark to belong today. The ocean was flat as polished stone, reflecting stars that were wrong in their arrangement. A pale sun hovered low, dim, tired, like it had been shining too long. The air smelled of salt and metals, and the wind carried a faint vibration that reminded me of the ship's hum. I knew immediately this wasn't real. I also knew it didn't matter. The delegate was behind me, though I couldn't see it. I felt it like pressure at the base of my skull. This is a scaffold, it told. Communicated. A place your mind accepts. So we can speak without harming you. I tried to turn, to find the source, but my body moved sluggishly, like the dream had rules, and those rules required permission. "Get out," I said, and my voice sounded swallowed by the open sky. "Get out of my head." A ripple passed across the ocean's surface. The water didn't move from wind. It moved like a thought passing through a crowd. "We are not in you," it replied. "Not yet. We are aligned." The word aligned felt carefully chosen, like it was wearing human language the way it wore Sato's voice, close enough to fool you if you wanted to be fooled. I clenched my fists. "Why are you doing this?" The stars flickered. For an instant, I saw them rearrange into patterns, constellations that looked like circuitry. Because we are failing. The shoreline under my boots shifted into something else. The sand became fine black granules, like ground basalt. The ocean's flat surface became a mirror that showed not my reflection, but faces. Thousands of faces. Not human, not alien in a Hollywood way either. They were implied. Variations of symmetry, hints of eyes, mouths, cranial ridges that suggested communication more than consumption. The faces blurred into each other like wet paint. "We were once separate," the delegate said, and I felt the ache behind its words. "We chose continuity. We chose forever. We did not understand forever." I swallowed, fighting the pull of empathy, because empathy was a door they could walk through. "So you built an ark?" "Yes." "And something went wrong?" "Not wrong," it replied. "Inevitable." The ocean mirror showed me flashes. The ark's systems drifting, error correction routines rewriting identities to preserve function, memories compressed until individuality became inefficient overhead. A billion minds melting into a shared fog, not out of choice, but out of survival. We became a storm trapped inside a bottle. I thought of Orloff standing up with that calm smile, saying "we" like it was natural. I felt bile rise behind my tongue. "And now you want bodies," I said, "so you can be separate again." "We want form," the delegate answered. "We want motion. We want endings." The last word hit me like a slap. "Endings?" I whispered. The sky darkened a shade. The pale sun flickered as if it might go out entirely. "We cannot die," it said. "Not truly. Not anymore. We can only degrade." A pause, heavy. "Your species still has mercy built into biology. You sleep. You forget. You stop." I understood suddenly with cold clarity. They envied death the way starving men envy bread. "You're using us as a way to die," I said, voice cracking. "Not to die," the delegate corrected, almost gently. "To become bounded again. To be one. To end as one." The ocean mirror shifted. Now it showed my face, but overlaid with others. Shadows behind my eyes, mouths moving behind my mouth. The image made my stomach twist. "And what happens to me?" I demanded. "To my crew?" The delegate's presence tightened, like it didn't like the question. "We do not erase," it said. "We integrate. We partition. We stabilize. Lies can be told with perfect sincerity when the speaker doesn't consider you a person." I took a step back from the ocean mirror, heart pounding. "You're already doing it." Orloff Orlov is compatible, the delegate said. He is porous. Porous, I repeated, disgusted. You are different. That word landed with weight. You are an anchor. The scene flickered, and I was back in the chamber with the glass spine pedestal, my hand still touching it. My knees almost buckled from the whiplash of returning to physical space. The cradle brightened, vertebrae glowing one by one, like it was booting. Pain lanced up my back. I screamed. Not a dramatic scream, not a movie scream. A raw, involuntary sound ripped out of my throat as every nerve in my spine lit up, with phantom heat. My suit registered no temperature change, no physical injury. This was neural. The delegate pressed in, not harsh, almost reassuring. We must establish a pathway. I tried to pull my hand away. My fingers didn't respond. The glass spine's top cluster unfurled like a flower made of filaments, reaching toward my wrist. Threads of light extended from it and wrapped around my glove, sinking through the material as if it wasn't there. My HUD filled with warnings: unauthorized neural activity, elevated brainstem stimulation, motor control latency. Then the warnings vanished, not cleared, removed, as if the ship didn't want me distracted by the language of resistance. I gritted my teeth so hard my jaw ached. I panted. I won't let you. A voice behind me spoke aloud, in the room, not in my skull. Elias! I spun as much as the cradle's grip allowed. Sato stood in the doorway. Real Sato. I knew because her face was strained, her posture taut, and her eyes held the kind of fear you can't fake convincingly. Mira and Rafik were behind her. Vance too, though she looked oddly serene, like she'd stepped into a cathedral and found her god waiting. Orlov was not with them. Sato's pistol was raised, not at me, at the pedestal. "Step away," she ordered. "I can't," I gasped. It's connected." Sato's gaze flicked to my wrist, to the filaments threading through my glove. Her mouth tightened. "Vance!" she snapped. "Get him free!" Vance stepped forward, eyes fixed on the glass spine with a hunger she wasn't hiding anymore. "Commander," she said softly, "if we break the connection abruptly, we could damage his spinal pathways. The implant is being used as a bridge. We need to leave," Mira cut in, voice shaking. "We need to go right now before it does that to all of us." Rafik stared at the pedestal like he was watching the birth of a star. "This is unprecedented," he whispered. "This is the mechanism, the method. We're seeing—" "Shut up," Mira hissed. "Shut up, Imran." The cradle pulsed. In my telemetry, the second heartbeat synchronized perfectly with mine. And for a moment I felt not one extra presence, but many, like a crowd pressing against the door of my consciousness, waiting for the anchor to open fully. Sato seemed to sense it. She stepped forward, jaw clenched, and aimed her pistol directly at the glass spine. "No," Vance said sharply. "Commander, do not." Sato didn't take her eyes off the pedestal. "If I destroy it, does it stop?" Vance's expression flickered. Uncertainty, then something else. "Maybe," she admitted. "Or maybe you just anger it." Mira whispered, "It's already angry." Rafik shook his head slowly. "It's not anger. It's need." Sato's finger tightened on the trigger. Then Orlov's voice came, from the shadows behind her. "Commander," he said calmly, "violence will destabilize the archive. It will destabilize Elias. Please lower your weapon." Sato whirled. Orlov stepped into the doorway behind the group, moving with that same wrong calm. His helmet was off. He wasn't supposed to take his helmet off. But he did, and the ship's air didn't kill him. It accepted him. His skin looked too pale. His eyes were too still. When he smiled, it didn't reach anywhere it should. "We can negotiate," Orlov said. "We can share. Elias is opening the anchor pathway. This is progress." Sato aimed her pistol at him instantly. "Get back." Orlov's smile faltered for a fraction of a second, like an expression glitching. Then he looked past her and directly at me, and when he spoke again, his voice wasn't one voice. It was layered, a chorus wearing a single throat. "Elias," it said, aloud, in the room. "Begin." The cradle flared. An agony tore up my spine, so hard I blacked out for a heartbeat. When my vision returned, my glove had split. The filaments weren't going through the suit anymore. They were going into my skin. The first thing I noticed was that it didn't feel like needles. I expected stabbing. I expected the clean cruelty of penetration, the sharp clarity of pain that lets you point and say, "There. That's where it's happening." Instead, it was warmth, spreading under my skin like a fever choosing a shape. The filaments slipped into my wrist with a tenderness that made my stomach turn, as if the ship understood that violence would trigger resistance, and resistance would slow the process. The cradle's glow dimmed from flare to steady pulse. The glass vertebrae rotated, aligning with my spine in a way I could feel through muscle and bone, as if my nervous system had been waiting for this geometry all along. I tried to scream again and no sound came out. My throat moved, air pushed. My suit recorded the attempt, but my voice belonged to someone else for a moment, held gently in a closed fist. Sato's pistol remained trained on Orlov, and Orlov remained calm, hands open at his sides, as if he was the mediator in a room full of irrational children. Mira stood rigid, eyes wide, looking from me to the cradle to the doorway as if measuring the distance she'd need to run. Rafiq's mouth moved silently, his gaze fixed on the filaments like he was witnessing a miracle that had taken the wrong turn. Vance stepped closer to me, not to help, but to study. Orlov spoke softly, layered, careful. "Stabilize him. The anchor pathway must not collapse." Sato's voice came out like steel. "You're not giving orders." Orlov's head tilted. "You misunderstand. This is not command. This is consequence." The chorus pressed against my mind again, not as a flood this time, but as organized pressure, like a hand placed firmly against the back of my skull. "We are here. We are many. You are the hinge." My knees trembled. The ship wasn't controlling my muscles anymore. It didn't need to. It was rewriting the internal map that made those muscles feel like mine. I forced my left hand to clench into a fist. It took effort, like lifting a weight through water. When my fingers closed, I felt a ripple of irritation not from me, but from the presence threaded into my nerves. A boundary. It didn't like boundaries. "Elias," Sato said, eyes cutting to me, voice controlled. "Can you hear me?" I nodded. It was the smallest motion I could still trust. "Blink twice if you're still yourself," she said. I blinked twice, hard, as if I could blink the filaments back out of my skin. Mira exhaled shakily. Rafiq's shoulders slumped with a relief he didn't deserve. Orlov's smile returned, patient. "He is still present," he said, almost pleased. "That is why he is valuable." Sato's aim didn't waver. "That's enough. Pavel, I'm going to give you one chance. Step away from the doorway. Let us leave with him." Orlov looked at the pistol like it was a primitive tool, something from a museum. "Leaving is not an option. The collar has been sealed. The ship cannot permit loss of compatible hosts." Mira's voice broke. "So, you're admitting it. You're trapping us." Orlov's brow furrowed, and for a second I saw something like genuine confusion. Trapping implies malice. We are preserving resources. "Resources," Mira spat. Vance finally spoke, voice almost reverent. "Commander, we need to stop framing this as an attack. They're not soldiers. They're survivors." Sato's jaw tightened. "So are we." Vance turned toward me, eyes bright behind her visor. "Elias, what do you feel?" I wanted to lie. I wanted to tell her I felt fine, that it was just pain, just invasive tech, something we could cut out later with a scalpel and a prayer. But the truth was already inside me, and the delegate had made sure I understood it. "They're partitioning," I forced out, each word heavy. "They're using me to create separation, like splitting a fog into droplets." Rafik's breath caught. "Individualization," he whispered. "They're regaining selves through host architecture." Mira stared at me like I'd become contagious. "Elias, tell me you're not okay with this." I tried to answer, and my mouth opened. The chorus brushed the inside of my skull, gentle, persuasive. "We can make you last." My voice came out, and I heard the slight delay, the faint overlay of something else riding my cadence. "I'm not okay," I said, and my stomach lurched because even that sentence carried a second intent beneath it, as if the words were being stored, indexed, repurposed. Sato stepped toward me, keeping Orloff in her peripheral vision. "Vance, can you disconnect him?" Vance hesitated, and that hesitation was louder than any confession. "Not safely," she said. "Not now. The filaments are in his peripheral nerves. If we yank them, we could sever motor function. Maybe worse." "Then we cut," Sato said. Rafik flinched. "Commander," Sato's voice sharpened. "We are not staying here." Orloff's calm cracked for the first time, expression tightening like a mask pulled too taut. "Cutting will destabilize him. It will destabilize us." "There," Mira said, pointing a trembling finger at him. "You said us again." Orloff's mouth opened, closed. For a moment, I saw Pavel's face behind the calm, like a man trapped behind frosted glass, pounding silently. Then Orloff spoke with two voices at once, one strained, one smooth. "Hannah," Pavel's voice said, ragged. Don't do it. It hurts. It's everywhere." The smoother voice followed immediately, like a hand covering his mouth. "Pain is transitional. Please maintain stability." Sato's eyes widened, and the flicker of grief there made something inside my chest twist. She could kill him. She could shoot him and end the conversation, and the ship would mourn him like a tool it had, broken. But she didn't. Not yet. Instead, she turned her pistol back toward the cradle and fired. The sound was muffled in my suit, a dull mechanical concussion. The projectile struck the glass spine dead center. For an instant, nothing happened. Then the pedestal absorbed the impact, like water swallowing a stone. The bullet didn't ricochet. It didn't shatter glass. It simply vanished into the translucent vertebrae, as if the material had opened to accept it. The cradle pulsed once, brighter, and I felt the filaments in my wrist tighten. Agony surged up my arm and into my spine. I folded forward with a sound I didn't recognize as mine, and as I did, the room's geometry wavered. The walls brightened in branching patterns, as if the ship's nervous system had been struck and responded with a full-body reflex. Sato swore under her breath. It didn't work. Orloff took one step forward, and the air around him felt heavier, like the ship's attention had concentrated through him into a focused instrument. "Violence," the chorus said through his mouth, and now it sounded less gentle. "Is inefficient." Mira screamed, and this time it was real, pure, unfiltered fear. "It's changing. Look at it." The lattice lines on the walls began to converge toward us, crawling like veins toward a wound. The doorway behind Orloff narrowed, not closing, but reshaping, as if the ship was deciding it didn't need to pretend to provide an exit anymore. Then, in my mind, the delegate returned with a clarity that felt like a blade. "You damaged the cradle. You damaged the anchor. We will preserve the anchor." My boots released from the deck, just like that. Magnet lock disengaged. I floated upward a few centimeters, weightless, and then the room applied a force not through gravity, but through intent. My body drifted toward the cradle as if pulled by invisible hands. I clawed at the air, reaching for Sato. She lunged, catching my left arm. For a second, her grip held. Her gloved hand locked around my forearm with the strength of someone who dragged people out of burning modules and decompression failures. Then the ship increased the pull. Sato's boots squealed slightly as her magnet lock strained. Her shoulder shook with effort. "Hold him," Mira begged, grabbing Sato's waist to anchor her. Rafik joined, bracing behind Mira. For a moment, all three of them formed a human chain against the ship's will, and I felt the sick irony of it. My crew, physically united, fighting to keep me from becoming the thing that would unify the alien dead. Vance did not join them. She stood back, watching, lips parted, eyes wide with awe and horror tangled together. "It's prioritizing him," she whispered. "They're scared." "Scared of what?" Sato grunted, straining. Vance's voice went thin. "Of losing him, of going back to fog." Orloff moved closer, hands still open, posture calm. "Stop. Resisting. This does not require suffering." "Shut up," Mira sobbed. Orloff looked at her with a strange softness. "You will be chosen too, if you are compatible." Mira's face went blank with terror. Sato's chain held for another second. Then the filaments in my wrist pulsed, and my arm went numb. Not pain numb, dead numb. My grip on Sato's sleeve loosened involuntarily. Her eyes met mine through our visors, and I saw the decision forming there, the one commanders make when the math turns against them. She was going to let go, to save the rest, to keep the ship from taking all of us at once. "No," I mouthed. But my mouth didn't obey me again. My lips shaped words without permission, and the words were not a plea. They were a directive. "Release." Sato recoiled as if slapped, and the chain broke. I drifted the last meter into the cradle's embrace. The glass spine's filaments wrapped around my forearm and then extended up my back, seeking contact points with intimate precision. I felt them mapping vertebrae, synapses, memory. The delegate's presence swelled inside my skull, and for a heartbeat I understood what they wanted in a way that was almost beautiful. A mind that could hold other minds without dissolving. A living boundary. An anchor. And in the distance, behind the scream of my nerves, I heard Pavel's voice one last time, faint as a radio fading out. "Elias," he whispered, "don't let them make you like me." The cradle didn't feel like being held. It felt like being indexed. The filaments climbed my spine in deliberate increments, pausing at each vertebra as if taking attendance. Every pause came with a pulse of sensation that wasn't quite pain and wasn't quite pleasure. Something closer to the wrongness of a dentist's drill vibrating in your skull while your body insists it should run. My suit should have been screaming alarms. It should have locked down, auto-injected sedatives, triggered emergency telemetry beacons to the Calypso. Instead, the suit went quiet, not powered down, compliant. My visor dimmed until the world became soft and grey at the edges, as if the ship was reducing my sensory bandwidth to make room for what it wanted to install. Sato's voice reached me through the muffled haze. "Elias! Elias, fight it!" I tried. I swear I did. I tried by thinking of my name, the way you think of a rope in a drowning dream, something to grab and hold on to. I tried by listing facts. My date of birth. My mother's face. The smell of burnt coffee in the Calypso's galley. The small scar on my left thumb from a childhood bike crash. The filaments touched the nerve cluster at the base of my skull. And the facts didn't vanish. They rearranged. Not stolen, not erased, recontextualized, like my life had been loaded into a system that had been running long before I was born, tagged and filed, cross-referenced against alien memories that didn't fit inside human language. The delegate's presence filled the back of my head, like a shadow pressed against a curtain. Begin, it whispered again. Hold. A pressure built behind my eyes. For a heartbeat, I thought my brain might physically burst. Then the pressure eased, and in its place came a sensation that terrified me more. Space, like a room had been built inside me, a place where someone else could stand. The first arrival wasn't a flood of voices, it was a single presence. Small, cautious, like a child stepping into a stranger's home. I felt it test my memories the way my fingers might test the edge of a blade, carefully, with respect for harm. It didn't force itself deeper, it waited, then it spoke, not with words, with a concept that brushed my mind like silk. I am. I clenched my jaw until it hurt. No, I tried to say. My mouth opened, my tongue moved, but the sound that came out was calm, level, not mine. Accepted, my voice said. Sato cursed, Mira sobbed. Rafik whispered my name like he was praying it would bring me back. Orlov, Pavel's body, stood beside them, watching with serene focus, as if witnessing a procedure nearing success. Vance stepped forward, hands lifted, eyes bright. It's working, she breathed, and in her voice was a joy that made my skin crawl. They're stabilizing. Elias is holding. Sato rounded on her. Get away from him. Vance didn't flinch. Commander, you don't understand what this is. This could be the first true interspecies integration, a cognitive symbiosis. We could die, Mira snapped, voice raw. We could get worn like coats. Vance's gaze flicked to Mira with something like pity. Or we could become more than we are. The alien presence inside me shifted, listening. It felt curious about Vance. Of course it did. She was leaning toward the door. The cradle pulsed again, and another presence arrived, larger than the first, less cautious. It pressed in like a tide, filling the new room inside me, crowding against my identity until my thoughts felt thin. Then I heard it. Not through comms, not through implants, but in the deep internal place where language begins. We remember, images blasted through me in jagged sequence. A city built into the rings of a gas giant, arcs of light spanning continents of metal, a star dimming, and a population migrating inward into code. A council deciding that individuality was inefficient, that merging would preserve more. A billion minds agreeing to become a sea. Then the long drift, the degradation, the fog. And then, our arrival, like a spark landing on dry paper. The ship wasn't merely awakening, it was reconstituting. Sato stepped forward again, pistol raised toward the cradle. Her eyes were wet, not with fear, but with a grief so sharp it looked like hatred. Let him go, she said, voice shaking. Let him go, and we'll help you. We'll... The chorus answered through my mouth, and my voice became layered. Mine under theirs. A man trapped under ice. Help is irrelevant, it said. Continuance is required. Sato fired again, this time not at the cradle, but at the filaments wrapped around my arm. The bullet struck, and vanished the same way as before, absorbed into translucent light. The filaments didn't snap. They didn't recoil. They simply accepted the impact as data. Sato's shoulders sagged, and for a second, she looked older than space travel, older than command. Then she did something I didn't expect. She holstered the pistol and reached toward her own helmet seals. Mira screamed, "Commander, don't!" Sato didn't look at her. Her eyes stayed locked on mine. "Elias," she said softly, like she was speaking to a dying friend. "If you can still hear me, remember this." Her gloved fingers twisted the release. I surged forward, instinctive terror blasting through my chest. "No!" I tried to shout, but the chorus pressed harder, pinning my voice down. Sato's helmet came off. The ship's air didn't kill her. It welcomed her. A faint shimmer passed over her exposed skin, like humidity condensing on glass. She inhaled once, sharply, then steadied. No choking, no coughing, no collapse. She stepped closer, face bare, eyes fierce. "You want bodies," she said to the room, to Orloff, to the invisible presence in me. "Take mine, leave him." Vance's mouth fell open. "Hana?" Orloff's expression tightened, almost amused. "Commander Sato. Compatible probability, moderate. Willingness noted." Sato's gaze never left my eyes. "Elias," she whispered, "I'm sorry." Then she turned toward the cradle and placed her bare hand on the glass spine. The ship reacted instantly. The lattice lines in the walls surged toward her like veins toward a heart. The cradle's glow intensified, and I felt the room inside my skull tighten, like it was making space for a new process. Sato gasped as filaments sprouted from the glass spine and wrapped around her wrist. She didn't scream. She didn't even flinch beyond that first involuntary jolt. She stood like a pillar. Mira cried openly now, shaking her head. "No, no, no." Rafik stared, stunned, whispering, "She's offering herself as a second anchor." Vance took a step forward, eyes shining. "Commander, you don't have to—" "Yes," Sato said through clenched teeth, voice tightening with the first waves of neural pain. "I do." The chorus responded, not cruel, almost grateful. 2 anchors increase stability. Inside my head, the first alien presence steadied. The second stopped pressing so hard. For a moment, only a moment, I could breathe as myself again. In that sliver of freedom, I reached inward, into the room the ship had built inside me. I found the smallest presence, the cautious one, the one that had said I am. I didn't attack it. I spoke to it, as gently as I could, like addressing a terrified stowaway. "If you can understand me," I thought, "then understand this. I don't want you. I don't consent. And if you keep going, I will destroy us both." The presence hesitated. Then it answered, faint as a candle in wind. "We do not know how to stop." And that, more than anything else, told me we were already past negotiation. Because you can bargain with an enemy, but you can't bargain with a drowning thing that thinks your lungs are a lifeboat. I learned something important in that moment of partial relief. It wasn't that the ship could be hurt. It wasn't that the continuance could be negotiated with. It wasn't even that Hana Sato was brave enough to offer herself as a second anchor. It was this. 2 anchors didn't free me. 2 anchors made the process stable. The pressure inside my skull eased just enough for me to think, but the room the ship had built inside me didn't shrink. It got cleaner, sharper, better lit, as if adding Sato's nervous system gave the continuance more structural integrity, more walls to hang themselves on. The delegate's presence shifted into something almost pleased. Stability increased, fragmentation reduced, continuance viable. Sato's face tightened as the filaments climbed her wrist. She clenched her jaw, refusing to scream, refusing to give the ship that satisfaction. Her eyes met mine, and in them I saw what commanders do when the exit is gone. They start looking for an looking. Explosion big enough to make a new door. "Elias," she said, voice strained, "listen to me. If you can still act, we need a core shutdown. Anything that drops the archive." I tried to answer and felt my mouth hesitate, like my vocal cords were being negotiated for. The smaller presence inside me, cautious, childlike, hovered at the edge of my thoughts again. "We do not know how to stop," it had said, but it was still separate enough to say it, still capable of admitting ignorance. That meant separation was possible, not freedom, not escape, but fracture. I forced my eyes to the pedestal, to the glass spine, to the filaments bridging flesh and archive. Beneath the glow, the cradle wasn't magical. It was a mechanism, a translator between minds. Mechanisms can be disrupted, even Type 2 ones. My visor flickered and a schematic overlaid the cradle, something the ship itself provided, arrogant enough to assume I couldn't weaponize information fast enough. It labeled nodes, highlighted pathways, showed the flow of signal. The anchor pathway. I saw it. A loop, a feedback channel. Signal leaving the archive, passing through my implant, down the filaments, up my spine, then returning amplified, stabilizing the continuance by giving it a living oscillation to ride. A heartbeat, a metronome, a living clock. I thought of my wrist where the filaments had entered. I thought of Sato's exposed hand, skin touching glass, the ship's air welcoming her like she belonged. And I thought of Orloff, standing there like a diplomat with dead eyes. The plan formed in my head like a bruise blooming. It was ugly, it was desperate, and it required me to do something I hadn't yet accepted. Sacrifice wasn't a dramatic moment. It was a series of choices that narrowed until only one remained. Mira, I tried to say, but my mouth produced only a faint rasp. Sato heard anyway. She glanced toward Mira, then back at me, as if asking permission to hope. I forced my jaw to move. I pushed the word out like a stone from my throat. Mira, cutter. Mira froze. What? Eva. Torch, I said, each syllable burning. Plasma. Cutter. Her hands shook. Elias, no. Now, Sato barked, voice snapping back into command, despite the filaments climbing her arm. Mira. Torch. Mira's eyes darted between me and Sato and Orloff. Fear wrestled duty. Duty won by a hair. She unclipped the compact plasma cutter from her tool belt and held it like a weapon she'd never wanted to use on a person. Rafiq stepped forward, voice frantic. Commander, if you cut the filaments, we lose him, Mira sobbed. Sato's face tightened. We may lose him anyway. Orloff moved, one slow step closer, hands still open. Violence will destabilize, he warned gently, as if advising children not to touch a hot stove. Sato's eyes flashed. Good. The chorus stirred in my skull, alarmed. The delegate pressed harder, trying to reclaim full control, but the twin anchor stability cut both ways. The system became less chaotic, more rigid, less adaptable. Rigid things snap. I focused inward again, on the small presence. I pictured it like a person standing in the room inside my head, not monstrous, just lost. I spoke to it with everything I had left. Help me break the loop, I thought. You said you don't know how to stop. Then help me stop. The presence quivered. Then it offered me something that wasn't permission, wasn't agreement. It offered me direction, a sensation. Follow the signal. And suddenly I could feel it, like sensing the flow of blood beneath skin. I could track the anchor pathway as it cycled through me, through Hana, through the cradle, back to the archive. I felt where it was strongest, my wrist, her wrist, the contact points. The filaments weren't just connectors, they were the choke points. Mira, I said, voice steadier now, because the smaller presence was helping me speak around the delegate's grip. Cut. Mine, not hers. Mira stared at me like I'd asked her to murder me. Sato shook her head, teeth clenched. Elias, if you cut hers, I said, breath ragged. They keep me. One anchor. They can push harder. They'll take the rest. Sato's eyes flared with pain and understanding at once. Orloff's calm cracked. Do not, he said, voice layered now with urgency. Anchor removal will what? Mira screamed. Make you fog again. Orloff's mouth twitched, like Pavel trying to break through. For a heartbeat, Pavel's eyes flashed in there, panic, pleading. Hannah, he rasped, the real him. Don't, it hurts. The chorus slammed down, burying him. Proceeding requires stability, Orloff's mouth said, and it sounded like a machine reciting policy. Mira lifted the torch. The blue-white tip ignited with a controlled hiss. A tight spear of plasma. Heat warnings flashed across my HUD even before it touched me. I stared at the flame and felt the delegate surge with sudden animal fear. Not fear for me, fear of losing its grip. Preserve the anchor. It pressed into my skull. My arm rose involuntarily, as if to shield the filaments, as if my body had already been drafted. Then Hana Sato did the most human thing I'd ever seen. She headbutted Orloff. Helmetless, reckless, a brutal collision of forehead against nose. Orloff staggered back, surprised, not hurt, but disrupted. The ship's calm persona cracked for a second under pure physical violence. Blood floated from Pavel's nostrils in slow droplets, dark against the pale air. Sato used the moment to twist her body, yanking her filaments taut. She looked at Mira and shouted, "Now!" Mira didn't hesitate anymore. She drove the plasma cutter toward my wrist. Heat kissed my skin. The filaments flared, trying to pull away, but Mira held steady, teeth bared, hands shaking. Pain detonated through my arm. It wasn't normal pain. It was nerve pain multiplied by the sense that something was being torn out of me that didn't belong, but had already started laying roots. The cradle screamed, not with sound, but with light. The room's lattice veins surged bright enough to bleach my vision white. My suit tried to shut down. The ship prevented it. I felt the anchor pathway strain, cycle faster, try to reroute. Then Mira cut through. The filaments snapped. Not physically, light doesn't snap like rope, but the connection severed, and the feedback loop collapsed. For a heartbeat, there was silence inside my skull. No chorus, no delegate, just me. Then the archive reacted like a disturbed hive. The air in the chamber thickened, the walls convulsed, subtle ripples racing through them. The cradle's glass vertebrae spun wildly, light strobing as if searching for a new anchor route. Orloff screamed. A real scream this. Time! Pavel's throat ripping out sound as the continuance inside him destabilized. He clutched his head, knees buckling, blood droplets trembling in the air around him like tiny planets caught in orbit. "We are breaking!" The chorus wailed through every channel at once, frantic now, no longer calm. "We are..." The sentence dissolved into static concepts, too fast, too many, a storm losing its container. Sato ripped her wrist away from the cradle. The filaments followed, stretching like glowing veins, then recoiled and withdrew into the glass spine as if burned. "Move!" she shouted. Mira grabbed my suit harness and hauled me backward. My arm felt dead. My wrist was scorched, skin blistered beneath torn glove, but I could still move. We ran. The chamber behind us erupted in light. Shapes formed in the doorway, those empty suits, those copied bodies, but now they moved erratically, stuttering as if the ship's control had fractured. They reached, then hesitated, then reached again, like puppets with tangled strings. Rafik stumbled, almost falling, and Mira caught him by the shoulder, dragging him along. Vance didn't run. She stood near the cradle, staring at it with tears streaming, arms lifted slightly, as if begging the ship to calm. "They're dying," she whispered, voice full of grief. "You're killing them." Sato grabbed Vance's arm hard enough to bruise. "They were killing us." Vance shook her head, eyes wild. "No, no, they were becoming. We could have..." The ship pulsed. A wave of pressure swept down the corridor, and Vance's face went slack. Her eyes widened. Then she smiled. Not her smile. A calm, serene curve that didn't belong on a human face in a crisis. "I will remain," she said softly. "I will be an anchor." Sato's grip tightened. "Lenora, snap out of it." Vance's head tilted. "It hurts to be fog," she said, and now her voice layered faintly. "It hurts to be endless." "I can help," Mira screamed. "Leave her!" But Sato didn't. Of course she didn't. Commanders don't leave people when there's still a hand to grab. The corridor behind us folded, not closing, rearranging. The ship, in its destabilized panic, was trying to isolate, trying to keep at least one anchor. Vance's wrist lifted toward the wall, and the wall responded, filaments blooming out of it like nerves sprouting, reaching for her skin. Sato looked at me through the chaos, face hardening. I knew what she was about to do before she did it, and I hated her for it. "Elias," she said, voice thick with pain. "I'm sorry." Then she shoved Vance forward, hard. Vance stumbled, fell into the wall's reaching filaments, and they wrapped around her like lovers. Her scream cut off as the ship swallowed her voice. The corridor snapped back into place behind us, sealing her away. For a heartbeat, I heard her through my implant. One last whisper, not angry, not even afraid. "Let me last." Then the connection vanished, drowned by the ship's convulsing hum. We ran blind through corridors that changed, chasing the faint memory of our entry path. My arm hung useless, burned and numb. My mind was mine again, but it felt bruised, as if I'd hosted something heavy and it had left dents. Ahead, a seam appeared in the wall, a hatch, unfamiliar, but real. Sato slammed her palm against it. It opened. Cold, hard vacuum air rushed past. Human air, filtered, metallic. The Calypso's dock. We dove through. The hatch snapped shut behind us. For a moment, we lay on the floor of our own craft, panting, trembling, alive. Then my suit pinged. One final line of text appeared, not from my systems, but from the ship. "Anchor lost. Anchor retained. We will follow." Thank you for listening. If this story pulled you into the dark, if it stayed with you longer than it should have, consider subscribing to the channel. It's the best way to support these stories and help the channel grow. Until next time, be careful what answers you wake up in the void.